October 2021, Zion, Utah. Since it's kind of late in the year and it's getting really cold up here, we decided not to make an early start of it this time, so it was near noon before we finally made our way into Zion. We decided to take Highway 9 into the east entrance of the park. Highway 9 runs from the east entrance of Zion all the way over to the main entrance and the visitor center, which is actually located near the town of Springdale. This was a really beautiful drive. Unlike some of the other parks we went to, this one feels more intimate. The cliffs and canyons in the other Utah parks were more spread out. They were bigger. And here, you're up close and personal with them. I like driving through these narrow canyons. It gives you a better look at the colors and the patterns etched in the rock. There are two tunnels on the east side of Zion. The first one is rather short but really pretty, maybe 100 or 200 yards. The second is over a mile long, and it's more of your standard concrete sleeved tunnel. This tunnel is very narrow, and because of that and the fact that there are no lights, the park only allows traffic in one direction at a time. As you can imagine, that makes one long line of traffic waiting to go in. There's also a height and width restriction going down this road, so don't think about bringing your RV through here. I think that both of these tunnels just make this drive that much nicer. So this drive on Highway 9 covers maybe a third of the park, but it's also the only part of the park that you're allowed to drive on. The rest of the park, well, you have to get on a shuttle and take a shuttle to see it. No traffic allowed. And here's the reason. Just way too many people. As we drove Highway 9, this was normal traffic, pretty much, bumper to bumper. You were very seldom out of sight of the car in front of you. The road also has lots of places to pull over and get a scenic view, but unless you were really lucky, you certainly couldn't find a parking spot. They were all full. This park is beautiful, which is also why this park is crowded. There are people all over the place, and this is October. It's cold. I can't imagine how crowded this park gets in the summer. It took us about 45 minutes to drive from the east entrance all the way over to the main visitor center. And once we got there, it took us another 20 minutes of, just driving around the parking lot trying to find a place to park. Because again, there are no places and you have to get lucky to find one. But patience paid off, and eventually we found a parking spot, hopped on the bus, and headed on up canyon. The shuttle buses take you up Floor of the Valley Road. This is the only way to get to this part of the park, which ends at the Temple of Sinawava. Once we got off the bus at the Temple of Sinawava, we started our first hike, which took us into the Narrows. The Narrows is about a 9-mile-long hike, but we didn't do the whole thing. The first 2 miles or so are on a decent path, but after that, you have to get into the river and hike up the river. This is a guaranteed way to get absolutely wet. So again, it's October and it's cold out there and we are not getting wet. But the 2 miles we could do, absolutely beautiful. Tall, steep canyons. I just loved it. But this cold isn't all bad. You can drink outside and your beer will not get warm. And it was getting late and we just had enough time for one beer before we had to make our way back home and call it a day. The next day, we headed on back to the park, but this time we decided to come in the main entrance because there was no need to drive the east side again. Traffic, again, was a nightmare, even though we were earlier, and the people, well, there were lots of them. This is the line of people waiting to get onto one of the shuttle buses. Kinda reminded me of Disneyland. You know, where they have those lines that take you through chains and zigzag, zigzag, zigzag back and forth until eventually you get to go onto the ride. Oh, and the last bus leaves the canyon at 7:15, and if you can't get on it, you better be ready to hike 9 miles to get back down to your car, and that would be 9 miles in the dark. So, with the expected 1-hour delays, you should probably be at the butt stop about 5:30 or 6 o'clock to make sure you can catch the 7:15 bus. And this time, for us, that was no problem. Since today was a little bit warmer, we got up here a little bit earlier and we planned to get out of here by mid-afternoon. So, we got off the shuttle bus at stop 8, which is the Big Bend viewpoint. We made a short stop there to take a look at the end of the Angel's Landing Trail, which, by the way, we did not hike. Why did we not hike it? Look a little closer. Yep, that's why. Those are people, that's right. So, after a short look around, we got back on the bus and headed on down to stop number 6. Stop number 6 is called the Grotto, and it is the beginning of the trail that takes you up to the Emerald Pools. So look, make no mistake, this place is called Zion, but it's Zion Canyon, and if you're gonna hike in the canyons, you're gonna hike on narrow trails that take you up and down along the walls. And so as you get higher and higher into this canyon, the trails get a little narrower, the drop-offs get a little higher, but the view gets to be better and better. And although you all know by now that I am not a fan of high places, I am a fan of these views, and I do like these hikes. They're a good workout, and I appreciate that. This was by no means the longest hike we ever took. It was, however, pretty challenging with a lot of ups and downs. And that was only to get us up to the middle pool. The upper pool was even steeper. Oh, and this time of year, trails are closed because of ice. We did not see any ice, but there must have been some along that trail somewhere. What we did see and enjoy, though, was the Middle Emerald Pool. This also turned out to be a good place to stop, eat a snack, take a break, before climbing all the way up to the Upper Emerald Pools. Halfway up, and the view is just getting better and better. It took a while and some hard climbing, but we did make it up to the Upper Emerald Pool. This was a small pool of water located inside a box canyon with some of the steepest, straightest cliffs I think I've seen in a very long time. I wonder how much water comes down here when it's really rainy. So we spent about 10 minutes up at the pool, enjoying the view and getting some rest, before we made our way back down the steep, rocky trail that brought us up here in the first place. So the hike today up to the pools was not the longest hike, but we worked, so we think we deserve a beer to end the day. And after enjoying our beer, we made our way home. And we decided to go home out the east entrance. There is some road damage out the east entrance, though. The rains and the flash floods do damage to this road regularly, but the Park Service seems to repair it almost as quick as it happens. The ride home was beautiful, and we even saw some buffalo. So now we were done with Zion Park, but there are still things to see, but that's for tomorrow. The next day, our hike took us to the belly of the dragon. This hike starts off by taking you through a cave that's about 100, maybe 150 yards long. This is a natural cave, and it's created by water, so there's no lights in here, and it gets pretty dark as you get to the very middle of it. But it's really an easy walk through the cave, and even though, like I said, it gets pretty dark in there, you don't really need a flashlight. Although, if you have a cell phone with a fairly bright screen, it probably wouldn't hurt. Like I said, the cave isn't really long, but what's really interesting is that the opposite end of the cave looks nothing like the entrance to this cave. Where the entrance to this cave is just one color of rock, the other side of the cave has different strata that has different colors. I don't know where it changes in the middle of the cave because it's too dark, but it's really cool when you get out the other side. And once you do get out the other side, you're looking up a dry wash. This dry wash isn't always dry, because when the water flows through this wash, the water flows through the cave, and it's this very water that actually created the cave. About a quarter mile up, you come to what appears to be a dead end. But after looking around for a while, we did find a trail that took us up to the top of that cliff. And from the top there, the wash continues up for at least another 3 miles that we know of. We found some stone markers that pointed the way for us, and so we continued hiking up the wash. The wash took us further up into the canyon, and here there wasn't so much of a trail as there was kind of a general direction. As long as you stayed low in the canyon, you were making your way forward. We went up about a mile before turning around and coming back down to a well-deserved rest and a cup of coffee. We stopped at the Moqui Cave Museum, and although we didn't go in, it looked rather interesting. We didn't go in because we were aiming for the sand caves, just a little ways down the road. The sand caves are up on the side of a cliff. I was really hoping that I'd be done with climbs, especially on the side of cliffs, but this took it to a whole new level. This wasn't a trail, this was literally a cliff that you had to figure out how you were going to traverse. But there were lots of people doing it, and although they probably weren't afraid of heights like I am, I figured, my goodness, if they can do it, so can I. At this point, my mom would say something like, "If your friends jumped off a cliff, would you?" Well, I guess now we know the answer to that question. Oh, and you might notice there are not very many pictures of Janet going up across this cliff. That's because, I'm using both of my hands to hang on for dear life. Unlike those little rodent children who seem to have no fear and, oh, forget it. Okay, so am I exaggerating, or is that a cliff? Tell me that's not a cliff. I am literally defying gravity. And some would say that I have an unreasonable fear of heights. But let me tell you, I am afraid of heights because of this. Yep, I almost died. They wouldn't have found my body for like hundreds of years, thousands of years. But I made it, and there we go, that last little walk to the cave. Okay, So the caves were really, really neat. Were they worth risking your life for? Well, some would say yes, some would say no. Me, I say I have no idea, but I did it, so I guess so. Oh, and look, way down there, there's our car in the distance, and I have to climb down there. Ah, yes, Grace. Thy name is? No, not Sly. Absolutely not Sly. Woohoo! I'm alive! I am alive! Take that, Cliff! I'm alive! Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo! And so, after that death-defying hike, we have one more thing left to do before we call it quits here at Zion. And this is the drive down Angel Canyon Road. The drive down this road seems to be completely owned by Best Friends Animal Sanctuary, because all the way down the road we found places where there was spots for animals that needed rescuing. They had places for dogs, cats, horses, and just about any other kind of animal that needs rescuing. They even had a pet cemetery. And the neat thing about this road was the very cool warning signs alongside the road. Not your typical government-sponsored warning signs. These things are cute. And so, it's Friday, and we're continuing our drive back to the RV, because this is the last excursion while we're here at Zion. Tomorrow morning, it's going to be time to get up, pack, and hit the road for Las Vegas. And so before we move on, I want to remind you once again that if you look in the description below, you'll find a link to all the places we visited so that you can find them easier. And with that, this adventure comes to an end. And as we move on, I certainly hope we'll see you at our next stop.